Hey everybody, this is Jen Baker of 800. As you can see behind me, my vintage dresser is taking on its new look. I've painted the body in Miss Mustard Seed yellow. Try to say that 3 times fast. And I've done the trim work in Annie Sloan's Pure White. And so now I am taking some sandpaper and I'm going across and I am distressing. And as I was doing this, I thought, you know what, let me stop, take a video, and kind of talk about the process that I go through, at least, when I distress a piece of furniture. So I kind of want to show you what I've already done and then do this side and show you, you know, where I go and how to do it and what grid I use and why. Okay, so let's kind of take a tour of the drawers real quick. So if I zoom out, you can see that I've already started distressing on the drawers, and now I'm working my way onto the sides, which haven't been distressed at all. So what I did was I kind of took the drawer out a little bit and I cleaned up the sides right here because I didn't paint the sides of my dresser drawers, and I also didn't paint the top. Now when I painted this, my drawers were in. I didn't take them out. And so when I was getting ready to distress, I had some paint up here along this edge and here along this edge, and there's even some underneath too, but you're probably never going to see those when you actually use this dresser, so I'm not too terribly worried about that. Now, as I was getting rid of the paint that's on the sides of the drawer and on the sides of the dresser itself, some paint started to come off of the sides just all on its own, which I was perfectly happy with, and I did it kind of along the entire length of each drawer. So basically like the outline of each drawer got distressed, and then this trim work that's going around each drawer also got distressed. And if we kind of zoom in real good on that, you can see areas where, you know, the bare wood came through, areas where I took off the white paint, areas where the white paint is still there and some wood's coming through. So I just sort of let it do its thing. I also had spots where a large majority of the paint that I had used to paint it with had come off, even on the knobs themselves. I had some chipping spots like right here. And if I go down to this other knob right here, this guy chipped quite a bit. But when you zoom out and kind of look at the grand scheme of this dresser, it's not so terrible. Like, there's distressing everywhere, so I'm not worried that, you know, this knob has more paint on it than that one. And then when I zoom in on the keyhole, you can kind of see the same thing. So there were areas where the paint came off, like especially in this corner, and then it stuck to the rest of the keyhole. But if you look at the top one, just a little bit came off right here. And again, I'm okay with that. That's kind of the look I'm going for. Just sort of random and not chippy overall, just chippy in certain places. So let's get started on this side piece right here, and I'll show you how I go about distressing to get a look like this. Okay, so we're zoomed in nice and tight right here, and before we start distressing, I just wanted to give you a couple tips about sandpaper in general in case you ever wanted to know anything about sandpaper. Here we go. So sandpaper is given a grade, or like a grit, based off of how many granules there are across the surface. The smaller the number, like a 60 grit or an 80 grit, means that the granules are larger and you can fit less of them per square inch on the piece of sandpaper. So for example, this is 80 grit sandpaper, which means in a square inch there's 80 little granules. And so to fit 80, they can be relatively big, which means that this particular grit of sandpaper is very tough. When you run your hands across it, like, it feels very scratchy. Now compare that to this grit, which is 120. 120, when you run your hands across it, it's much smoother because in 1 square inch, they have to fit 120 little granules, which means that they have to be a lot smaller. So the smaller the grit, the finer the sandpaper, the higher the number of the grit, the finer the sandpaper, the lower the grit, the rougher it is. So for this particular piece, I'm alternating between using 120, 100, and 80 grit sandpaper. So as you can see, when I did this trim work, I didn't pay too much attention if white paint got on the sides. Like if it didn't stay right on this trim piece, that's okay with me. I didn't really stress about it because what I'm gonna do is come through with sandpaper and sand that off anyway. So, but when I'm sanding, what I don't do is take my piece of sandpaper and go straight down like this. What I do is take a look at what are called the high points. So this is a high point, this is a high point, these two guys here, these two guys here, and maybe like the front of this piece. High points are like the raised points or like the mountains on your piece. And the lower parts are, or like the valleys are called your low points. So if you think about this, if this was in somebody's house, what would have gotten rubbed off, you know, faster are these high points because they're probably the ones that would have gotten dinged up next to the wall. You know, people would have touched them with their fingers, their oils would have rubbed paint away. So those are the spots where I'm going to concentrate, and I'm going to start with 100 grit just to see how this distresses. And so I'm just using like a flicking motion. And if I linger in a certain spot, the wood starts to come through. Let me kind of zoom in so you can see a little better. See that right there? So if I linger in a particular spot, the wood will pop through. Now if you watch the top, if I just do a real quick little flick, I have some yellow paint showing through and not so much wood. And you can kind of see the areas where I didn't really care if I got white paint there because I'm going to come back with my sandpaper and distress it. So just kind of to my liking, I'm going to go across and just give this a good rub. And I'm liking how the 100 grit is working. It's not really, really scratchy. So I'm not getting big scratch marks on my piece. I want this to look as natural as possible and not super fake. So I'm just kind of letting it do its thing. Okay, so I would do that all the way down, and then I might come through and even wear off a little bit here. Maybe do that one light, and this one maybe scratch a little harder. So I get some wood coming through. Kind of like that. I can come in on the side and define this line that's going all the way down. See, like right there, now you can see that there's a line now here, where versus like up here, it's still covered over with paint. But as you kind of go across your piece, look for peaks, look for valleys, look for edges and any other spots where you can take sandpaper and just kind of wear that paint away to simulate age and, you know, normal wear and tear.